Hello, it's 6:30 on January 30th, 2023. Welcome to this meeting of the Council of the Town of Oakville. I would invite everybody to rise and join Council in O Canada. Thank you, everybody. Please be seated. Let me turn that back on. In 1820, Indigenous people here began welcoming settlers from all over the empire. Soon they were helping slaves escaping from the United States to settle here too. Today, our Indigenous founding partners are still here enjoying this land with us. They fish and camp under their treaty rights. Indigenous people in their thousands also live with us as neighbors and friends. Our Indigenous white and Black settlers created a community with an attractive degree of harmony and prosperity. In 1857, the Ontario legislature recognized Oakville as a town. At Town Hall, all of these years later, we fly the flag of the Mississaugas of the Credit beside the flags of Oakville, Ontario, and Canada. We fly these flags together to acknowledge our origins. People from all over the world are attracted to the livability that we create. We offer newcomers a warm spirit of welcome. We offer everyone our founding story so everyone knows what we are part of. We feel sorrow and distress for acts of racism and intolerance suffered across Canada and here at home. We want our future to be equitable and inclusive for all. The path of truth and reconciliation can unite us all. Please keep well, stay safe, and let us on Council know of any chance to be helpful to you and yours. Please let us know anytime you can help increase Oakville's harmony, prosperity, and livability. Madam Clerk, there are no regrets this evening, and Council, I would like to ask if there's any declarations of pecuniary interest. And Madam Clerk, I'm not seeing any. I would like now to acknowledge that I'm issuing the following proclamation, and it's short, and I'd like to share it with you. Whereas throughout its long history, Ontario has been characterized and strengthened by its diverse and distinctive cultures, and whereas from the time of its establishment, people of African and Caribbean descent have made significant contributions to the development and betterment of our province, and whereas the Black community continues to play a vital role within the social and cultural mosaic that is Ontario, and whereas Black History Month was first recognized in Ontario in February 1993, marking the 200th anniversary of the passage of legislation prohibiting the importation of slaves into Upper Canada, and whereas Black History Month continues to provide the opportunity to remember and celebrate the contribution that African and Caribbean Canadians have made to Ontario, I therefore hereby proclaim February 2023 as Black History Month in the town of Oakville. I would just add that I think you're going to be amazed at the unprecedented choice and variety of activities that the community has in store for us to properly celebrate this history. Council, it would now be in order for two of us to move and second us into Committee of the Whole. Councillor Lischina, Councillor Longo, any objection? There being none, that carries, and we're now in Committee of the Whole. Council, could I have a mover for confirmation of the minutes of the previous council meetings of December 19th and January 23rd? Councillor Elgar, and thank you, Councillor Dudek. Any objection? Thank you, Madam Clerk. That's carried. So, Council, we have only 5 consent items. I wonder if I could get a motion for the consent items. Councillor Chisholm, thank you. Any objection to the motion? There being none, the consent items.
Could we confirm that 7.5 has a reference to a confidential recommendation? 7.5, community spirits.
What?
Community spirits has a memo that was distributed with an additional recommendation that's confidential, and that's public.
So I'd ask Councillor Chisholm to include in his motion the 2023 Community Spirit Awards update report, and that the recommendation contained in the confidential memo from Julie Pennell be approved. Is that, and is there agreement? Is there any objection to that? There being none, we now have dealt with the consent item. Thank you. So that, with any luck, will bring us to discussion items. We have 4 discussion items, 3 public and 1 confidential. The first and most important item on tonight's agenda is the 2022 Audit Planning Report. Jade Surgeoner, the Manager of Accounting, is going to introduce our auditors, KPMG, and we are then going to receive and hopefully approve the plan of audit, as I understand it. Jade, we are all ears.
Good evening, Mayor Burton and members of council. Thank you for the opportunity to introduce the KPMG audit team tonight. I just wanted to provide a few quick comments before turning things over to them. The first is that the audit planning report before you tonight is for receipt. And I just wanted to highlight this because KPMG is completely independent from management as well as from council. They have set requirements that they need to follow under the auditing standards in order to issue an opinion on the town's financial statements. So we can certainly ask questions about the process, the standards, or any questions about procedures they'll perform, but we don't approve this report as it's actually KPMG's audit. Having an independent third party validate the financial results of the town is a requirement of the Municipal Act, but it also goes towards our strategic vision of being an accountable government that's committed to transparency. Tonight, KPMG will walk through their plan, and then they will return in May to present the findings of their audit. At this time, I'll turn the presentation over to Matt Cirardelli, who's the audit senior manager on the engagement, and Carlos Alvarez, who's the audit partner.
Thank you, Ms. Surgeoner. KPMG, are we getting them remote? Is that the plan here? Well then, there's Mr. Alvarez and there's Mr. Cirardelli. Good evening, sirs. We look forward to your information.
Good evening, Your Worship and members of council. As previously noted, Matt Cirardelli and I will walk through the audit plan for the fiscal year ended December 31st, 2022. The audit plan, I would say, is similar to the prior year, but certainly not identical. And included in your package is the audit plan itself. If you are following along, I would like to make some opening remarks on page 109 of your package, which is the topic of materiality. As a reminder to council, We as auditors do not audit every single transaction. We have this concept of materiality that we use to plan and perform the audit, and that is a critical item to keep in mind. On page 110, it outlines our materiality thresholds, which we use to tally up any and all differences as a result of the audit process. And for 2022, we have set that bar of materiality at approximately $11 million. What that means to you is that when we present our audit results in the month of May, we will summarize all of our audit misstatements and compare it to that $11 million threshold. Individually, $11 million is a very big number. We have a much lower tolerance for audit differences, and our tolerance for audit differences is set at approximately $560,000. So that should give you a better sense as to the level of precision in which we undertake the audit. The biggest change from this year compared to the last year is a result of a new Canadian auditing standard. It is referred to Canadian Auditing Standard 315. That standard, in a nutshell, is more for auditor practitioners to ensure that we continue to work on making our audit files more robust and more clearly documenting clients' processes and controls around the internal control environment, as well as the IT aspects that relate to the audit function. So that would be the largest impact on a year-over-year basis. From a accounting standpoint, the way that your management team brings together the financial statements in terms of the accounting rules, there are no changes in any of the accounting rules for fiscal 2022. I would like to remind members of council that there is a significant new accounting standard, but that new standard is not yet effective. It is called asset retirement obligations, and that will be effective for your 2023 fiscal year. The reason why I continue to raise this as a key point of discussion is because that is one of the most significant accounting standards that have been released in the last 5 to 10 years. And again, that requires a lot of work on the part of your management team. Further in the audit plan on page 112, it outlines what we call the group audit scope. Your financial statements, if you look at the very first page, it is referred to as a consolidated set of financial statements. That implies that you have components that together, when you add them together, they form the consolidated set of statements. We perform audit work on the various components, and we allocate our materiality in proportion to the size of those components. The work that we perform on these components, which you can see on screen, beginning on the left-hand column with the town itself, and then moving over to the right with Oakville Enterprises Corporation, all of the risks that we've identified in the current year are consistent with the risks that we would have identified in the prior year. Moving along to the next page, an important conversation is the topic of fraud. Fraud does happen, whether it is with municipal audits or non-municipal audits. In Canada, we as KPMG and as auditors, we are specifically required to respond to 2 fraud risks. The first is the fraud risk associated with revenue recognition, and the second fraud risk is associated with management override of controls. So on every audit within Canada, we're always required to respond to those 2 risks. We will certainly respond as part of our audit approach. One of the key procedures that we perform as part of the audit is we look at a sample of manual journal entries posted by the accounting and finance team, and using certain high-risk criteria, we examine manual journal entries to ensure that they make sense with the type of organizations that you run and that it makes sense with the operation of a municipality. And certainly, as part of our audit findings report, we will specifically comment on these two mandatory fraud risks. I will pass it on to Matt Chardelli to walk through some of the other slides further in the report.
Great, thanks very much, Carlos. We're going to skip one slide and go to page 115, and I'll start going through what I like to call the meat and potatoes of our audit approach. So starting with tangible capital assets, this is an area for any municipality or equivalent that is material by default. This caption of your financial statements comprises your buildings, your assets, your land, and all of the infrastructure within the town. And as such, it forms a relatively large portion of our audit work. What we do is consistent year over year, again, because this is something that's material in any such audit of a municipality. We will look at any additions, any new fixed capital assets that have been purchased outright. We will also do testing over assets that have been construction in progress over the past several years, which have since been completed and now entered into service. We will also look at any assets which have been disposed of during the year for any reason. Our approach here is fully substantive. That will involve going down to source level documentation, invoices, construction agreements, contracts, and progress billings for assets which are still being constructed, and we'll make sure that everything is reported accurately and completely. In addition, we have some other requirements that would apply to any audit, as I mentioned. Amortization of those tangible capital assets for accounting purposes is something that we will recalculate in full. We have a very comprehensive approach in that regard to make sure that the assets are being amortized appropriately over their individual useful lives for accounting purposes again. Also, we will be looking at any indicators of impairment. We'll work with your management team to see if they've identified any assets which may show indicators and warrant further analysis. Now I'll go to the next page and continue on. Revenue, probably the second largest area of focus in our audit, again, consistent with the prior period approach here. We are very substantive and detailed in the work we do over revenue. Certainly the tax levy is a large component. That's not profiled on this page because it is very straightforward for us to audit that, given that the levy and the rates are public knowledge. What you see here are the developer charges and government grants, two other portions of revenue that we dig into in great detail. Government grants at the bottom of the page, generally straightforward for us as auditors to tackle. Third-party documentation can be easily obtained, allowing us to tie out any revenue source from other government bodies. Developer charges, on the other hand, is quite a bit more detailed because developer charges are earned and received at different periods of time. Often the funds will be received before they are earned for accounting purposes. So our procedures will work with your management team and the records they have to ensure that developer charges that were received in the past that are now earned based on work that's been performed and developments that have continued over time are taken into the financial statements appropriately, and vice versa, if any are received but not earned, that they have been deferred so they can be recognized in future periods when eligible. I'll move on to the next page, please. Another discussion point, the post-retirement benefit liability. This would represent the present value of the future costs that the employee benefits for employees current and past of the town, what that's going to be in the future. So again, discounted back to current day number to reflect the time value of that liability. This is considered an accounting estimate. Certainly looking at forward costs and discounting back to the future has some complexities, and there are several assumptions that must be made in order for management to estimate this number for the financial statements. Because of that, management engages a third-party specialist and actuary to prepare this report and allow them to book an annual adjustment. This is consistent with what's been done in the past. What we will highlight is that every 3 years, that report that the actuary provides management is revamped, a new report is created, and that report is relied on for a period of 3 years, rolled forward each year. This year, management would have received a full new report. And what that means for us as the auditors is we'll work with management to audit the data provided to that actuary in order for them to prepare the report. And then after that, we will look at the key assessments and assumptions that the actuary has used in their report to ensure that they make sense for the purposes of coming up with that estimate. So a little bit more work this year because that report is new and in hand, but certainly nothing that we haven't done before, and we know the data that management keeps is tidy and relatively easy for us to work through. Moving on to the next page, please. Contaminated sites and asset retirement obligations are a talking point because, as Carlos said, next year there is the significant change in how these are estimated and reported in the town's financial statements. As Carlos said, that will be a large undertaking for management, not only for the town, but for any public sector reporting entity. The town does have until next year to implement this. So what you see on the page here reflects the current standards and our current auditing approach. What I will say is the current standards are far less demanding and detailed than those that are coming next year. So we will work with management to make sure that their approach, which is the same as last year's, continues to meet those requirements, knowing that next year this will look quite a bit different. Moving on to the next page, please. Just a quick point on the timeline. I know Jade did mention this during her introduction of us. We will start with some of the audit work over the small components, such as the business improvement areas and the gallery in February, and then we will return for the core audit of the town throughout March and April with an aim of completing our report and presenting our findings to you in May, as Jade mentioned. Moving past that, I think I'll pass it back to Carlos for a discussion on independence and some of our appendix content.
Thank you, Matt. And just as a reminder, from time to time, there are other projects in which the management team asks us, as KPMG, to be involved with, or through the, RFP process, that is consistent with the procurement policies that are in place with the town of Oakville. We do have a internal system of controls to ensure that on any audit, tax, or advisory services, that we as KPMG always maintain our independence, as it is a cornerstone of our audit profession. And we have the system that we've developed called Sentinel, in which we use to ensure that any services provided by my colleagues, as an example, meet the independence requirements. One of the main foundations of independence is that we are never in a position where we are acting in the capacity of management. And that's just an example of one of those items that we go through when we are entertaining any other projects that may be asked of us. And as part of our independence, we also have internal rotational policies that we as an engagement team are required to follow. Okay. We will provide your management team with an engagement letter that outlines all of the terms and conditions, which are very similar on a year-over-year basis. Moving along to the next slide. Again, just a quick comment about CAS 315. Again, that's the only change for the current year. If your management team, again, asks us to perform any other services, we have to go through specific protocols on that. Included in the rest of the audit plan are a few appendices, which I was not planning on going through on a page-by-page basis. The one item to highlight is just as it pertains to ESG. Obviously, that is a very important topic, not just within Canada, but globally. Certainly, we have services to offer on a as-needed basis. Those who set the accounting standards in Canada are currently working on active projects that may result in the inclusion of natural assets being included in your consolidated financial statements. That is more than a few years out, but certainly from an accounting profession perspective, that is currently being worked on in terms of capturing some of those assets, including those in your financial statements. So that would cover what I would call the formal topics associated with the audit plan. From in terms of insights outside of the audit plan, certainly cybersecurity continues to be one of those top 3 discussion points in every council meeting and every board meeting throughout Canada. Certainly we will include some additional highlights on the topic of cyber when we present our audit findings further in May. So with that, those would conclude my formal topics and comments.
Thank you very much, Mr. Alvarez and Mr. Chidelli. Council, are there any questions for them, or will you hold your questions for when they're back with results? All right. In that case, would one of you give us a motion to receive? Councillor Haslett-Deal, thank you. Any objection? That carries. And now we come to discussion item 9.2, which was a notice of motion for election sign regulations moved by Councillor Nanda and seconded by Councillor O'Meara. We have a number of delegations registered to speak and share their information with council on this matter. But the chair is aware that a member of council wishes to move a motion to refer, and that takes precedence in our procedure bylaw over the main motion. Councillor Lischina, you're recognized to introduce your...
Sorry, Your Worship, point of order. Can we at least introduce the motion first before we go to a motion for referral?
It is introduced. It's on the order paper.
Speak to it then prior to a motion to refer?
A motion to refer has precedence. We will get there. You're going to get your day. Councillor Lischina.
Thank you, Your Worship. In looking closer at the notice of motion, there were a number of issues that were coming up, including that there wasn't a full consultation of the public. And so I would like to make a motion to refer to staff, that staff undertake community consultation and report back, including legal advice and on the existing bylaw regulations and availability of election signage and options to further regulate and prohibit election signage, including third-party election signs on public property and the resources and costs of implementation. Thank you.
All right, Council, I have to call the vote on a motion to refer. Does anyone object to the motion to refer? No, I don't. Motion to refer carries. Now, Council, in the interest of the same public consultation being sought, I propose to now call and hear the delegations, and so that staff can be informed as they go forward with this referral of what the public have brought forward tonight. And Councillor O'Meara, you and Councillor Nanda moved this at a previous council meeting for tonight. It's on the record, it's in the agenda. I don't think you need to speak to it, and you might want to save the speaking to when it comes back.
Again, Your Worship, now that the motion to refer, we can only speak to the motion about the referral. We can't speak to the actual motion. When we introduced the motion at the last council meeting, we were not able to speak to that motion. So we have been we are not able to speak to this motion at any point, and that is not how these motions should be discussed.
You are able to speak to the motion when it comes back. And, you know, during the delegations, you'll have lots of opportunity, if you choose to take it, to work into your questions any information that you want. Madam Clerk, would you please call the delegations?
The first delegation is Hanan Rizkala, representing the federal conservative candidate of record, Oakville North, Burlington.
Welcome, Ms. Ricala. Council looks forward to your information.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Town Councillor, Regional and Town, and thank you for allowing me to speak for this motion today. I'm a federal candidate of record for Conservative Party of Canada in Oakville North, Burlington. And you would be by now knowing the borders of Oakville North, Burlington. It's mainly north of Upper Middle in Oakville. I have been resident in Oakville for more than 10 years, and from my experience speaking to thousands of neighbors and residents, I know that the election signs are crucial for raising awareness for the coming elections and inform citizens of the candidates in the race. I'm very concerned about the motion, if passed, that will critically affect the democratic process of the elections going forward. And I believe that there are other measures we can easily implement to fix that concerns for this council as the following. Number one, regarding the environmental concern of the signs, there are many environmental friendly materials are introduced in the industry that are allowed by Halton Recycling Stream. Council could easily provide guidelines to candidates of what material should be used on the signs, and candidates should take responsibility of collecting these signs and providing it to the recycling depot after elections. Additionally, the town can encourage candidates and local associations and parties to reuse previous signs of election. As an example, we have an unorthodox frequency of federal elections for the last 8 years, leaving us with 3 elections. Having such regulation will improve the planning of the signs ahead and will make it reusable and cost-effective. For the second concern about the visual cluttering of the roadways and distraction to drivers, it's important to note that the town of Oakville does not allow the large 10 feet by 20 third-party billboards as it's happening in the surrounding municipalities as Mississauga and Burlington. Therefore, there are already fewer distractions happening to the Oakville people on the roads. To this point, it's also important to note that election signs contain very little information, like the candidate pictures or not, the logo, and the word they are running for. For such, election signs are considered to be non-distractive. It takes far less to see it on the roads, and that paid for, also the paid for advertisement that allowed by the Oakville Transit Shelter sometimes includes more information and more distractive, and it is still allowed. We also must consider the difference between wards and the impact on the diversity of the community growth. I will give an example. Ward 7, it has 1, if not 2, main public streets, and we have seen through the last election big signs put on a private property. So my question would be, how Ward 7 will be impacted with this motion? Almost null. However, we in other words like 1, 4, and 5, and 6, and 7, we almost left by, in my riding, 5 to 6 streets only. That's, for an example, 6th line, Postmaster, 3rd line. Regarding the third point, which is coming to the neighbors of the neighbor municipalities to ban the election, the town of Oakville is separate and distinct differently from the other cities. Most importantly, the city currently sign law prevents the large signs. As saying goes, just because our neighbors did something that was not right doesn't mean we have to do the same. Fourth point is about the broken signs and pickup of these. It's easy to be remediated. Candidates and their campaigns work tirelessly through the campaigns in short time to pick these signs, and I have seen firsthand that citizens are first to come to call campaigns to pick the broken signs. To alleviate any concern about this point too, council can impose fines or time guidance to deal with the broken signs. Also to ensure the candidates provide a contact numbers for the city to reach them quickly to replace these signs. Regarding the last point about the act of amending allowing municipalities to pass by laws respecting signs, we are suggesting that the council vote against this motion as it's written and instead revise the motion to include few additional rules that will allow signage to be put on public property while still addressing the concern of both councillors. We are very concerned about banning the election signs in the public property that's not for public interest, because it cuts out an integral part of the election process. First thing, it denies the public knowledge of the election and the candidates running for weeks until the private properties has been accessed and sign has been distributed privately. Second, it denies citizens the crucial information that there is an election in the time we are facing low voters in the election time. Such a move could be perceived as barrier by the council, and given that the incumbents are unfairly given an advantage in the election time. I would also put in front of you that there are certain legal problems are happening in other cities and towns, like, for example, the one happening in Vaughan, where in Vaughan it was forced to overturn their bylaw banning election sign when the Supreme Court of Canada ruled it is unconstitutional. In fact, the Supreme Court has stressed that the importance of signs are effective and inexpensive means of communication with individuals. I would put again the same with the city of Brampton and all what's happening there. As for my closing, for solution, I recommend the councillors to consider the community and stakeholders committee to work on improving the process of the election signs. We can use different material to be environmental friendly. We can impose limit number per signs per section in streets to limit where the candidates can be blocking each other's signs. Elections are part of the democratic process of Canada, and for candidate signage has been used since our election began. To cancel this tried and true way to easily inform and engage with taxpayers' public runs counts as against the democratic process. I do hope you will vote against banning election signs on public properties. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Raskalin. Are there questions for the delegation? Councillor O'Meara?
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Thank you very much for coming and speaking to us today. And I assume you were a federal candidate in the past election, is that correct?
Correct, in the 2021.
Thank you. So do you use software or technology to canvass and to knock on doors? What software do you use to approach and to canvass and to solicit support while you're campaigning?
Sure. So as a candidate, we have multiple levels of approaching constituents. It's social media would be one of the biggest one now. But again, we have the hard copy, like door hangers, leaflets on the doors, and that goes one by one. And then we have the signage, which is either private or public. So all the modalities are used, and all of them gets their own attention and their own audience.
So do you have tiered responses? Do you only knock on certain tiered doors that your software says are favorable candidates or not, or favorable supporters or not?
No, we start by 2 phases. Phase 1, which is knocking on every door. We knocked on 20,000 doors in 1.5 months at the start. And then the second phase, when it's close to election, we call it go out to vote. We knock door on the ones we have identified as supporters.
Okay, and that obviously costs money, that software? Is
Yep.
that, and who pays for that? Your riding association or your central?
No, that's donations raised for the campaign itself.
From the federal party or from your own?
No,
riding
from
association?
constituents.
Pardon?
From constituents.
Okay, so if a candidate doesn't have that capacity and a party and that they're at a disadvantage, is that correct? They wouldn't be able to get that software that you have access to?
It's not about the software. So volunteers goes down on their foot to door knocking. People would go to put signs. That's again manpower. It's not about the software. So software has no impact on that, if I can comment on the software part. It's more driven by manpower and people to volunteer.
I'll use people power rather than manpower because I'm sure, like you, there's a lot of women out there who are doing incredible work.
We're
out there.
trying our best. Yeah.
So I guess my question is, do you find there's not financial advantages to being a candidate for a party, that you get benefits that maybe other candidates don't get, or you say there's no benefit to that at all?
I can answer that for the municipal election. There is no party behind, and signs were everywhere. So you are individuals in municipality, and you still everyone managed to put signs, even the school trustees. They are, I would say, the least to be funded for. They still put signs up. So I wouldn't vote that having money or not, party support or not, would impact, because municipality was a proof of that.
No, I know, but you're speaking as a federal candidate, right? Not as a municipal candidate. So that's where my question was. And I guess, would you find signs cost money, right?
Sure.
So do you think there's an advantage for candidates that have more money and are able to spend more money on signs and put signs up more than other candidates? Do you feel
I
that there's
don't
an
believe,
advantage?
no. To answer frankly and honestly, no, because even in federal ones, Green parties, PPC, every party, all of them, 5 or 6 parties were putting sign up. So it doesn't matter. Everyone puts sign up. And again, to go to my point, in my riding, it's 5 streets. So this is not where the big bulk goes. Private properties still go on.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you very much, Mr. Scullin.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk, the next delegation. And Madam Clerk, I wonder if IT can...
There was a hand sign.
Oh, sorry. Councillor Nanda, I beg your pardon. But one little problem first. The chair's computer is frozen, so that's a little bit inconvenient. Can we do something to make it work? Mrs. Collin, Ms. Nanda, go ahead.
Hi there. Thank you for your presentation. Just on the environmental side, would you say your party would use environmentally friendly signs, or in your past election, were the signs that were used, would they go to landfill or would they be recyclable?
To give you proof of environmental commitment, our signs are still stored till date. We did not dispose it, and we plan to use it again. So back to the point about environmental reuse is a major part. So if we encourage parties to use standardized signs to plan for reusing it, that can be very environmental help.
But if you were to, in the future now, decide not to run, or you lost again, and eventually they had to be disposed of, is it something that your party would look into for future?
So I have seen previously people stickering on signs. Again, it's reuse. We can always invent ways to do it. Again, that's not addressing the point of the material itself. So if there is a bylaw mandates, and my advice is to get a committee and get the stakeholders on the printing houses or the involved stakeholders and get the information about how much the cost will be, non-environmental to environmental. And once there is a bylaw, everyone will abide to it.
Mm-hmm. And just for one more clarification from what my councillor colleague was saying, according to the knowledge that we have, federal and provincial parties do use specific softwares to allow you to be able to see who your supporters are, which means you have the ability more so than municipal elections to be able to see from previous elections who your supporters are. So you would be able to target private homes.
No, that's not 100% true, because with the rate of selling houses and moving in and out, so all the database between elections are not valid anymore unless you are really door knocking every month through in between, and that's not happening. So if the red drops today, we spend almost 3 weeks door knocking every door until you identify your supporters. So the previous data doesn't really help. I wouldn't say it counts for 10%, 20%, because people move in and out, pass away, changes happen.
So after doing that, all that hard legwork, just like the rest of us do,
Yep.
you don't see that as enough work to be able to get your message across, to be able to get the voters out? Because we all do get out the vote, right? So
Yeah.
we're looking at getting those residents to come out and vote, and also be able to have that visibility on private property.
Yeah, so again, I'm not clear about the question you are targeting now, but in general, to answer is having signs on public property, we prepare to put it the day after the red drop, either municipal, provincial, or federal. So if red drops today, 3 a.m. or 2 a.m., people get out to put on the public one. So that's for us is the alert. It's alerting people there is an election happening, red dropped. If you prevent that, we're going to have to spend the 2-3 weeks I identified as identifying supporters. Then when we identify these supporters, we reach out to them house by house, and then it's more, I would say, individual volume distraction to put signs on each house. So you can evaluate here, putting 6, 7, 8 signs on third line, second day of red drop, until 3 weeks after you start distributing in house. It's a major difference here for public awareness, who's running, who's the color of their party, or the message or whatever we put in, as minimal as it can be distractive in the road. So I can't stress more how having it as ASAP after the red, and it's kind of a mass advertisement rather than individuals, which takes time, identifying people, distributing it, and recollecting after. Imagine you collect 20 signs on third line versus collecting 200 or 300 from houses through time after election. So by all means, I don't believe there is any comparison between the private and the public one. And it's depriving people from the alert that there is election happening and informing them about the knowledge of election.
Okay.
Yep. Any question else? Thank you.
Just a moment, please, Ms. Riscallen. You've generated more interest.
Okay.
Councillor, the new councillor from Ward 7, Dr. Scott Shee, has a question for you.
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Hannah, coming to join us to have.
Sorry, I can't hear you. I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I have a question. So when you do after your election, did you do some research about which way is more efficiently more impact your voters? Like they know, your voters know your name through the big signs on the public area, or you knock the door and they got your long sign.
Every method counts. That's my methodology. So when we put the sign out, people start knowing there is election. These are the names. But they never vote because of the signs only. Then when you reach out the door, you have the conversation, you door knocked, and you canvass and you know. Then they start getting to know you. Then they decide, I will vote for you. Then they will think about other candidates coming to their door. And then they will receive the door hanger. And then they will receive the reminders. And then they will receive the email. They will see you through social media. Hammering. And from marketing point of view, you know, every 10 methods you do gets you 1 vote. So every method counts, and depriving any of them is impacting the outcome of the election.
Yes, thank you. I know this everything count, but this, for my experience, so I know those big signs on public area, they cannot vote.
Sorry again?
The big signs on the public area, they cannot vote. So you only get the vote from who know you, who communication with you and apply your long sign on the property, that's you got the vote.
No, I don't agree that big signs doesn't make people vote. Again, as I mentioned, every method counts. There is many people you will not be able to reach at the door. In my case, as federal, we are talking about 150,000 voters. Maybe it's smaller for municipal, but we can never reach out all these people. So signs can make an option. Some people, again, I'm speaking federally, maybe they are devoted for parties. So once they see the blue sign, they know it's conservative, they get the name, they go tick the box. So again, every method counts. You can't say this one replaced that. Public and private property signs, everyone has its own impact. Social media has impact, door knocking has impact, and all works together.
Okay, thank you.
Okay? Last call?
Mrs. Callan, I think now we can release you. Thank you very much for the time and the information. Madam Clerk, the next delegation, please.
Next delegation is Elizabeth Chalmers from Joshua Creek Residents Association.
Welcome, Ms. Chalmers. Council looks forward to your information.
Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to delegate this evening. I'm here tonight as the president of the Joshua Creek Residents Association. I need to be reading it, so I'm going to need the glasses. The Joshua Creek Residents Association supports the use of election signs on public property during the period of an election at any level of government. We do not support banning election signs on public roadways, and we find it troubling that the motion has come forward without any public consultation. We recognize that during the municipal elections, wards with large numbers of candidates have had many signs put up in their neighborhood. It happened in Ward 3 in 2014. I know what happened in wards in 2022. In Oakville, there are candidates for 2 councillor positions, mayor, regional chair, and trustees. Even if there's only 2 people per race, that's still 16 candidates. That's a lot of signs, just with a minimal number of people running. So there can be considerably more than 16 candidates in wards with large numbers vying for councillor positions, etc. However, the high level of interest in running for public office in Oakville is not surprising. Oakville residents have always been engaged in their community, and their engagement contributes to the livability in Oakville. Oakville benefits from the competition and choice in our elections. And so we believe for the short period of time that signs are allowed, that they are an effective means to create visibility and awareness for individual candidates and the election itself. They're a positive contribution to the democratic process. Why do we need signs on public property? Because elections are a public matter. Transparency, fairness, and equity are core to our democratic system. Public space is our space, and so election signage, within reason, belongs in the public domain. And furthermore, signs do alert the public that an election is imminent and thus increase awareness. Incumbents have the private property sign advantage. We are deeply concerned that banning election signs on public property would create an advantage to incumbents. Incumbents have resident email lists not available to others, and they often have a strong and established social media presence, which a new candidate may not have developed to the same degree. Incumbents could quickly and easily dominate the private property signage simply through contacting their lists. Eliminating public signs for the short period that they are allowed simply seems unfair to new candidates. How does a candidate build name recognition? Election signs on public lands allow new candidates to build name recognition while allowing everyone fair access to the same public space. Their election signs serve as notice to all of us that they're interested in serving the public good. Building name recognition is critical for newcomers as they undertake canvassing and other campaign activities. And name recognition is particularly important in municipal elections, as all candidates run independent of political parties. In provincial and federal elections, those political parties do provide a certain level of support to local candidates and can help increase awareness of the election and the party candidates. That additional level of support and awareness does not exist for municipal candidates, which makes election signs that much more important for them. Do signs make a difference? Well, signs start the name recognition process, particularly in municipal elections. If advertising your name and business were not effective, why are people paying the town to advertise on the medians and in the bus shelters? Why do local businesses put up signs? The town itself uses its own approved mobile sign locations to create awareness and visibility for specific messages. And nor are there concerns that such signage creates a distraction for drivers. So why would only election signs be a distraction, given they are also subject to regulation? The cost of signs? They typically do cost less than traditional media, including newspaper advertising, TV advertising, and mailing campaign literature. And with respect to social media, public elections belong in the public forum, visible to all, not just those who have access to online social media platforms. About the environment, well, parts of election signs have always been recyclable, and now the entire sign could be recycled, as Vancouver did in the last municipal election, creating plastic pallets from their signs. And often, if a candidate is somebody that ran before, they can reuse signs from previous campaigns. What are other ways to address concerns about the number of signs? Well, there are several options that would effectively address concerns which should be considered and tested before resorting to the extreme of banning all public property signs. One, limiting the number of signs a candidate can place on public land. This would also have the effect of equalizing some campaign costs, since they'd all have the same restrictions with respect to the signs. You could increase the number of public locations for signs. Currently, they're not allowed at community centers, libraries, or even out in front of town hall. So this has the effect of bunching signs on the few permitted areas. Perhaps limiting signs to one in these public areas where they belong would make sense. And finally, you could limit the period during an election when signs can be placed on public locations. This might be more helpful in a municipal campaign, which tends to have a longer campaign period. Bylaw enforcement of signs. Well, there are fines for violating the bylaw, and they help reduce the administrative costs of bylaw enforcement. Those fines can be increased to address costs. I know it has to be revenue neutral, but from the 2018 report, you've got a long way to go before what you're getting from signs addresses the cost of bylaw. The sign deposit could also be increased and only returned if there are 0 violations. This would help ensure the town does have funds needed for enforcement. It will incentivize adherence to the bylaw and would only penalize the candidate who violates the bylaw, not everyone. And furthermore, there's no evidence that a candidate who ignores existing bylaws in this election is going to follow another bylaw in another election. People who break bylaws probably don't care which one they're breaking when they do it. And finally, of the many costs that the town incurs supporting democracy, this should be one of them. Monitoring election signs should be a priority for bylaw enforcement during an election, noting that elections do not occur frequently and the time frame is typically known well in advance. What about other municipalities? What are they doing? Well, some of them, including our immediate neighbors, Mississauga and Burlington, have banned signs on public property, but the majority of municipalities across the province have continued to support the election process by permitting signs, including Ottawa and Toronto. Halton Region's bylaw banning signs on their roads has reduced election visibility on regional roads in Oakville, and it's likely contributing to the bunching effect on the municipal roads. And rather than following Halton Region, the town should ask them to reverse their ban. Do election signs harm residents? Given there are signs along roadways across Oakville for many reasons and safety is not compromised, there does not appear to be evidence to support the contention that only election signs are harmful to residents or distract drivers. Does banning election signs on public property harm residents? There does not appear to be any benefit to residents to ban public property signs, and there's certainly no benefit to candidates. In fact, the inability to use signs to create awareness may be considered a barrier for a candidate. Banning public signs appears to only benefit incumbents, and accordingly, supporting for such a ban could be viewed as self-serving for currently elected representatives. Why is the town not conducting public consultation on a motion that gives incumbents a clear advantage? We don't have the answer for that, but we really recommend holding a public consultation that can help bring forward solutions that support all candidates who put themselves forward to run for public office, not just the incumbents. And there's ample time to consult the public, since an election at any level is likely a year or more away. In conclusion, the Joshua Creek Residents Association respectfully asks members of councils to vote against this motion and to instead consider a public consultation and time to consider other options to address the sign concerns that have been raised by some residents. Let's keep the focus on continuing to have fair, visible elections that broaden our democracy and not narrow it. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Ms. Chalmers, for your information. I take it your message was written, I think you were here when Councilor Lischina
Yes, I was.
moved a motion
Yes.
to create public
I was pleased to
consultation.
see that, but I thought I had to stick to my.
So I just wanted you to know that your
But yes, I
wish,
was very happy to hear that.
your wish has already been granted. Are there questions? I saw Councilor Giddings first and then Councilor O'Meara so far. Councilor Giddings.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, thank you for coming out, Ms. Chalmers, and I think, I'm fully aligned with what you do with the Residents Association and your beliefs. You combine with the other residents associations every election and have a public debate, correct?
Yes, in Ward 3, the 5 residents associations have organized a all candidates meeting, I think since 2010. So for 4 elections now, we have done that, yes.
And at those debates, you allow everyone to have a table and meet and greet and brochures and whatever. Just out of curiosity, would you see value in being able to, you mentioned election signs at community centers, I believe. If we could do that in a respectful, organized, one per candidate way. Would it make sense for you if you continued that on with having something available at the community centers, whether it's a no-cost drop-in for residents to meet candidates on Sunday afternoons or Tuesday evenings? Is that the kind of item you're looking at in terms of the public consultation?
What do you mean for this? Sorry, so there was a survey in July 2021, right, that was done, but didn't appear to have a large response, although I think I responded for the JCRA, and I didn't see anything afterwards. So with respect to public consultation, I think it has to be a formal one in the public domain. So whether it's done in community centers with smaller groups, whether it's done as a, count, like the way we do them for development applications, right, where you come to a location and you can do it, that sort of thing, yes. But I think you have to, I thought the survey was a good idea for people to answer, but there really wasn't a lot of awareness about the survey, to be frank. So I think there's more than one way to do public consultation, but I think it's important to have people come to a venue if possible, or also by Zoom.
More fulsome?
Pardon me?
In a more fulsome manner?
Yes, I think you need both, really. And I also think, so I was pleased to see somebody the person before me was a candidate, because I think it's important to hear from people who have been candidates in past elections. It's obviously extremely important for people who are running to have multiple ways of getting awareness and their name out there. And I understood the questions about the implication that you already know who your supporters are, so you don't need a sign. Like, the name of the game is to increase the number of supporters so you win. It's not to just stick with the same number of supporters and get them to give you a sign. It's to get more supporters, and signs do play a role in that. And, there is research. There's a political science professor at Mount Royal in Calgary who's doing research on the use of signs. He did some stuff in 2015, came to the conclusion that signs did make a difference. They don't make a massive difference. But also Columbia University, a prof did one in 2015, showed the difference was 1% to 2%. it's not earth-shattering, but it's significant in a close race anyways, right? So the notion that signs have no part to play because of social media or because of other ways of getting people, I mean, you're trying to increase the number of people that vote for you in an election, and signs play a role in that. I mean, come on, the town uses signs to make revenue, right? You know it.
Thank you for coming out.
Anyway,
Thank you, Ms. Chalmers.
did you have another
Oh,
question?
Councillor
Sorry, Councillor O'Meara.
O'Meara, I did say.
Thank you very much, Ms. Chalmers. And just thank you for being involved and engaged for a number of years. We've seen you at council on a number of issues, and I truly appreciate that. And I know this isn't the first time we've spoken about election issues as well. This predates me, you know, and I'm getting up there now. That's to say something. But the study that I did, that you did raise in 2015, you know, I read the same study, and it was 1.7% is the increase that it gives incumbents, sorry, not incumbents, that it gives voter turnout. But that is voter turnout. And I guess you've mentioned a few times about the advantage incumbents get.
Are you talking about the fellow from Mount Royal or the?
Yes, Mount Royal, yes.
So
yeah.
there was the Columbia one also talked about voter turnout, sorry, about advantage, signs giving the advantage. That was a different study out of the US.
Yeah, because I have scoured, and this is where my question's going, I've scoured high and low, left and right, up and down, everywhere. I cannot find any evidentiary data supporting incumbents and public sign displays. We take that for granted, and a lot of people say that, but I can't find that data. And you mentioned it in your presentation 3 different times. Mm-hmm. Can you share with me where you have that data?
Well, I think we came out of the fellow in Calgary also has multiple papers out there. Dwayne Brad is his name. Mm-hmm. And there were some studies done in Newfoundland as well.
Okay, if you wouldn't mind circulating that with us, because again, I get that signs promote involvement, but I cannot find that connection with supporting incumbents. And that's, I think, is important for all of us to hear. That would be helpful. And I guess my question, do you feel in your capacity as a resident that our town staff are able to I guess, fulfill the mandate of enforcing the sign rules that we have right now? Do you feel that has been done effectively?
I think that the bylaw enforcement could do that, yes.
So they are or they can? I'm trying to, do you feel that they've done a good job now and that the rules we have in place are being adequately enforced?
So I believe there was an issue with signs being placed too close to the cenotaph in, everything was Bronte, right? Not the one that's St. George's. And I noted that in 2018, the study that staff did, that was the only change they made, to limit signs, I believe it was distance, so that we wouldn't have that situation. At the same time, it seemed to take over a day to get that sign removed off the cenotaph. So there needs to be perhaps more concerted effort or more will to do that type of enforcement. I do believe it can be done, right? I don't think this isn't something they have to do 12 months of the year, day in and day out. There are specific times, and perhaps if you were to limit the amount of time that signs could be out there, as other municipalities have done, that would also help. You know, I can see that you might think, oh, it's a struggle over 7 or 8 weeks for sure. I don't know, maybe you should limit the time. That's one way of doing it. But yeah, I think we have the capacity, and I think we should have to have the will to do it as well.
Would it surprise you if I were to tell you that as of yesterday, election signs are still up at Post Ridge and Dundas right now for the municipal election? Would that surprise you?
It would not, because I've seen a couple signs. And I can tell, for example, I saw one on Ford Drive today, and I can tell that probably what happened, it was one of the ones thrown onto the ground because it's a big sign propped up against a fence behind a tree. It's clearly been there for a while. And so I did see some signs here and there. Again, I can come back to the fines. I know you charge people, right, for when they put in the sign. I guess, I don't know if fine is the correct term. Increase it. Don't return it if there's a single violation. Make it incentivize people in a different way. Right. There's also maybe legitimately, I believe one of the candidates for mayor in the last election missed a few signs. As a new candidate, perhaps he didn't realize he needed to get out there and do certain things. So there are people that don't care, and there are people that maybe legitimately missed a sign, didn't know somebody put it there. So, no, I'm not surprised that some signs can still be left over.
And then just my last question, I guess, would it surprise you to hear that numerous candidates and even many real estate agents I talk to say it's the cost of doing business? And that's just part of the deal. And how would you suggest we go about regulating an attitude or a culture like that?
Well, I don't think it'll happen in one election, but I did note in the 2018 report that they estimated the cost of bylaw enforcement around just under $15,000, and that the monies that were brought in for people having to register their signs, et cetera, was $2,800. So perhaps that's not enough of a cost of doing business. Perhaps it needs to be substantially more. It may not matter to a main party candidate in the federal election. Maybe they have so much money they don't care. I'm not certain that's true at the municipal level where there seems to be so many people running. I don't know that everybody is drowning in money and can afford to throw it away, but there are options around the monies, and I'm aware that you have to be revenue neutral when it comes to bylaws, when fines, et cetera. So maybe there are ways to look at it that way, though.
Thank you very much.
Nothing we're telling you.
No, but you're perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Chalmers.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk, the next delegation, please. I beg your pardon. Councillor Hazlitt-Thiel.
Thank you, Mayor Burton. So Elizabeth, I just wanted to thank you for articulating very eloquently in your letter the importance of this and holding the tradition that JCRA has always had, that that signs should be fair and visible for all. But I also wanted to thank you for bringing solutions, because it's so easy to say that this is wrong, or we can't do this, or don't do that. But what I applaud residents associations such as yourself do is you bring solutions to the table so that we can work through those. And as you heard tonight, public consultation will occur. And I would even encourage staff to strike a task force to support and bring some of those ideas forward as well. So thank you very much for the time you put into this. I know it was significant.
Thank you, Councillor. I'm sure you spoke for all of us on that. Madam Clerk, the next delegation, please.
The next delegation is Pierre Savillon.
Mr. Sauvageau, Council looks forward to your information. I'm trying to spot you on my screen.
He did not come this evening, and he's not on Zoom, so he won't be speaking.
Well, then I have to retract my welcome for another time, perhaps. Madam Clerk, would you call the next delegation?
The next delegation is Anya Dunning from Oakville Lakeside Residents Association.
Welcome, Ms. Dunning. Council looks forward to your information.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of council. My name is Anya Dunning, and I'm the president of the Oakville Lakeside Resident Association. The members of our association feel strongly against the ban of election signs. Elizabeth Chalmers, our fellow resident over at JCRA, has already given an excellent in-depth rationale of why they are opposed to the ban, and OLRA is in complete agreement with what they have already said. Election signs have long been a part of our democratic process, and to ban them without public consultation is undemocratic. And that is our obviously something that looks like it's going to change tonight. So there's no reason to sort of drone on about it, but we are, very pleased that you will engage in the public. We believe all potential candidates running for office should have an equal opportunity to promote their name. Banning signs on public land gives an unfair advantage to the incumbents. And we just want to say we thank council for now looking to consult with the residents. And that's all.
Ms. Dunning, thank you for a model presentation.
Yeah. I didn't want to repeat. Elizabeth did such a fantastic job. I think you kind of got all of the information you probably need from her, so I don't want to waste your time repeating what she's already said. But thank you, Elizabeth, on behalf of all the residents associations in our ward.
Good, thank you very much. We appreciate it. Madam Clerk, the next delegation. Councilor Haslet-Thiel? It was possibly an error.
The next,
Is there another delegation?
yes, the next delegation is Carolyn McMinn from Trafalgar Chartwell Residents Association.
Ms. McMinn, welcome. Where? I don't see her. Do you have her?
No. Oh, she's joining on Zoom.
Okay. Oh, she's appeared on my screen now. Ms. McMinn, welcome. As soon as you're unmuted, we look forward to hearing from you. Hello.
Hello, can everyone hear me?
We're hearing you well, thank you.
Right, I'm not sure if I can get my video to work. Hang on, let me see, start video. There we go. Now I can see everyone. Good evening, Your Worship, and councillors and everyone in the audience. Basically, I was going to read our letter into record, but I believe all the members of council actually have a copy of it. We just stand side by side with our sister residents associations in our opposition to any move to ban election signs on public property. You've heard the reasons why. I don't really need to rehash them, but I would like to say thank you to Elizabeth Chalmers for all the very hard work she did in putting together her submission. The one thing that does worry us is any lack of public consultation, which we're very pleased to hear that we will now have. It smacks of chipping away at our democracy and our democratic principles. And so I really thank you for voting to actually refer this so that we can have some public consultation. So thank you. Short and sweet.
Thank you very much. It's always in order to say I agree with what was said. So thank you very much. Are there questions for Ms. McMinn? Councillor Haslet-Thiel? We have a thumbs up for you from Councillor Haslet-Thiel. We appreciate your information and the time you took to present it. Thank you very much. Madam Clerk, the next delegation, please.
Next delegation is Lee Wilkening from the Bronte Village Residents Association.
Hello, Ms. Wilkening. We're interested to hear your information too. Welcome.
Hello. I'm in competition, so I'm hoping for a thumbs up. So, Your Worship, thank you, and councillors, thank you for giving us the floor. I am Leah Wilkening. I'm a board member of the Bronte Village Residents Association and echo the comments of the previous Residents Association's delegates. One thing I would like to add, I appreciate the referral for public consultation. I would like to add that respectfully, the BVRA asked the town council to also direct town staff to report back on best practices with those communities who permit campaign signs on public land, such as sign recycling, reusable materials, and limits to the size and quantity of signs. We want to add that the public consultation should be informed, that how we do the public consultation should have some information and some knowledge around the form and process for how we do public consultation, like Councillor Giddings had pointed out. So we would love it if perhaps we can add to the public consultation some information gathering on the staff, town staff on behalf of the residents.
Thank you very much for your information and your suggestion. I can assure you that staff intend to do that.
Great.
Thank you. Are there questions? Just thumbs up. Look, I saw at least 3 thumbs up. Madam Clerk, is there another delegation?
The next delegation is Carrie Colburn, representing the Conservative Party of Canada.
Welcome, Ms. Colburn. Council looks forward to your information.
Good evening, Your Worship, and all the councillors. Great to see you again tonight. Thank you for the opportunity to present this evening. So as I said, I am the Conservative candidate of record here for Oakville. I ran in the last federal election, but in fact, most of my comments are going to be, of course, they're for all elections, whether it's municipal, provincial, or federal, but I actually think this is probably most important municipally. So if you could please, can I advance myself?
I understand it. You may be able to do it yourself, and if not, we'll get someone down to help you. Well, you're a success already.
Yes, awesome, thank you. So yeah, I am not in favor of eliminating lawn signs. I think that allowing roadsides is particularly important for municipal elections. We all owe you a debt of gratitude, Ms. Chalmers, because a lot of the points, of course, are the same. But it is part of democracy. Some of the comments have been made, well, you know, you should be door knocking or you have software. Anybody who has worked in marketing knows that in a successful marketing campaign is multifaceted. You can't just door knock, you can't just do social media, you can't just advertise, you need to have every aspect of it. For people who have been out door knocking, what is the first thing you have to say? I frequently have to say, and maybe it's different, and I know it's not, it's worse on a municipal election. Do you know that there's an election going on? And road signs are one of the best ways, frankly, that alert people that, oh my goodness, there's something going on in town, whether it is federal, provincial, or municipal. So voter turnout is already dismal. It's beyond dismal. Like it's awful. And so you could look at Oakville, we were at 28.3, Burlington was at 27.6, and you might say, well, and as you obviously know, Burlington does not allow lawn signs, or sorry, arterial road signs. You can say, well, big deal, what's the difference between 28.3 and 27.6? It's actually substantial. If you do the math on eligible voters, that means 1,009 less voters here in Oakville. And I would remind you that there were 5 races in this last municipal election that were determined by less than 1,000 votes. Another key point, Burlington has even worse than we do, and they actually allow online voting. That's not something that we have. So that difference is even, that tells you a lot, that not having road signs makes a big difference. And again, so election signs do serve notice to the public that election is on, and I'm pretty sure that half the time, most voters don't know until they start to see those signs pop up. Political science prof at McMaster, and this was specifically around municipal elections. It's difficult to get information on the people that are running, particularly in municipal elections. We get more support, as you pointed out, from our parties when you're doing it federally, but to try and find out who's running municipally isn't necessarily easy. To understand what they're about isn't necessarily easy. There's less media coverage for local campaigns, and there's no political party banners to help simplify the choices. So if people are going to make an intelligent decision on voting day, road signs help them do that by getting name recognition and knowing who else is running out there. I've heard that social media is the cure to all our ills, and I would tell you that it's not. It's part of the pie, the marketing campaign that you use. But I did some research myself. Pew Research says, now this isn't a US number, 28% of people don't use social media. So we can't just say, you know what, social media is a cure for all our ills. That's how we're going to get our name known. It doesn't work. Advertising works. So again, profs from Columbia University said signs significantly increase vote margin. Again, advertising works. There's no surprise there. Again, a key thing for everybody is helping to build name recognition. The other thing that I thought was interesting, you could take it as a positive or you took it as a negative, Sean, but that arterial signs are interpreted as a sign of candidate quality because it means that they've got the resources to A, buy the signs, and B, they have a team behind them. So it also is an indication of how much support an individual candidate actually has. And of course, banning signs does help incumbents. Democracy can be complicated, noisy, messy, and disruptive. And, you know, regarding are they environmentally friendly, not as much as any of us would like, but I would also point out that the Green Party uses road signs, and they need the ability to get out their candidate's name and their brand name recognition like everybody else. We are only talking 36 to 45 days every 4 years. It doesn't seem like that recently because there's been federal, provincial, and municipal all in a pretty short period of time. But normally, you would be looking, and then we're talking 36 to 45 days every 4 years. If we look at 70 complaints, and I can tell you one of my very good friends is probably one of those people trying to get other people's signs that are illegally placed out, that's 0.03% of our population. That's basically nothing, and what the impact on democracy, I think it's worth it. Better speed up, looking at the sign there. So, glad I came with solutions. There's all sorts of things that we could do. You could limit the number of signs allowed to be erected per candidate, destroy the signs that are placed illegally, institute a per sign fine for illegal placement, prepare the staff. I've heard, well, staff can't be everywhere. Why is there still a sign at Postmaster? There's only 35 streets. If people don't know that, there's only 35 streets in all of Oakville where you can place signs. I can't think that bylaw enforcement can be that difficult. And if you see a sign that doesn't happen to be on one of those 35 streets, that's a pretty automatic stop and throw it in your car. Doesn't take a lot of resources, 2 people, 2 trucks, you're done. And have the illegally placed signs out of there within 72 hours. We are required, as you are required, we're all required to remove those signs within 72 hours. Then bylaw enforcement should be prepared and remove the legal signs within 72 hours. Takes a lot of incentive away for them to be putting them up in the wrong places. Thank you for your time, and again, I appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Ms. Colburn, for the time you took and the presentation. I also appreciate that you too came with solutions. Councillor O'Meara has questions for you.
Thank you, Kerry, so much for coming. You mentioned Burlington a couple of times. Are you aware of the election results in 2018 in Burlington when they had a sign ban in place?
39% turnout, I think, I remember, but no.
6 out of his 7 incumbents all got booted. And they had sign bylaws and bans in place. Is that, I guess, would you be surprised to hear that signs may not have been the cause to 6 of 7 candidates losing their position in Burlington in 2018?
I don't think you can dispute that incumbents have a natural advantage, municipally in particular, during an election. Mm-hmm. What that would tell me in Burlington is that clearly the public wanted change, and voters are always right.
There it is. You know, and you talked about the difference in the voter turnout between Burlington and Oakville, and it was 27 and 28%. Wilmont, Ontario, which is in the region of Waterloo.
I heard you had data on this,
I do, I've got lots of data. They increased their voter turnout by 5%. It went from 36% to 41%, and they have a ban on public roads. So I guess I'm trying to find the correlation that a lot of people are drawing between voter turnout, incumbent supporting signs, and anecdotal evidence. And I did ask Ms. Chalmers for some information, and I'm happy she's going to send it to me. But again, I'm wondering if you can share with me the data, the empirical evidence that's not anecdotal, that is, you know, voter turnout is suppressed and incumbents get the evidence. Do you have that data that you can share with this council? Because I still can't find it.
Yeah, just beyond what I shared and is the same as that Ms. Chalmers shared. Again, it's a part of the marketing pie that you all have. You need to do multiple things. And again, most people note that there's an election when they see an election sign. At 28.6 or 27.3, we should all be asking ourselves, what can we do to get the people of Oakville more engaged, make the effort to turn out? We have a problem. Like, this is not something we want to see. We don't want to see it go down. I would go back to Wilmont and say, what did they do to increase, you know, what did they do instead to get people engaged, the fact that there's an election going on? Like, we should be embarrassed.
No,
at some point, we're not going to have a democracy.
I fully share those sentiments, and the provincial election was no better. It was about 30 to 35% voter. So I guess my question is, I'm careful with which correlations we draw between voter turnout and signs, because I think electoral engagement across the board is at a horrible state. And I don't know if signs on public roadways are the cause or the symptom of that. That's my look at. Anyway, thank you very much, Your Worship. Thank you, Carrie, for coming. I appreciate it.
Wait, there's more.
Thank you.
Councillor Haslet-Thiel, Ms. Colburn, I meant there's more questions for you.
I thought you said I could go.
No, I said, wait, there's more questions. Councillor Haslet-Thiel, and then Councillor Nanda. You're going to be here for a while.
Sweet.
Thank you for coming out, and thank you for the solutions. And I also thank you for some additional perspective on what it feels like as a candidate and those efforts. I guess my question is, I come back to the public consultation and a possible task force or engaging further in solutions. Would you be prepared if bylaw and staff reached out to engage further in a conversation about some of those solutions so that, you know, we can get to a place where that you may be more comfortable, you know, you'd be comfortable with?
Sure.
Thanks.
That was an easy question.
I like to throw a few easy ones. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Nanda.
Hi, Carrie. Thank you so much. Nice to see you. Thank you for your presentation. In terms of the arterial roads that you were talking about, and you just said that we only have 35 roads, you would agree that all the arterial roads lead to private residences, right? All the arterial roads. So at the end of the day, we all have to drive home and we all have to go into our private residences. And would you agree that there's still high visibility by having signs on private properties?
There's a reason that, you know, bus shelters and stuff are on major roads. You know, realtors would be a good example, commercial in particular, about drive-bys. The people want to be on the QEW, having their property back on, having signage on the back of the QEW because they want that visibility. They want the cars going by. And you, I'm sure, would also agree that private roads, small roads, don't get the same traffic that larger roads do, and so you get much more. You mentioned about manpower. You get so many more views of a sign than being able to go door to door. You know, can you do 100 doors in a day? I don't know, something like that maybe. So, you know, you can probably get 2,000 or 3,000 impressions on a major arterial road.
But in terms of the signs that are on buses or bus shelters, these are not signs that people are asking private residences to put on their property. That's very different from election signs. There is a reason that they're putting it on public property because they wouldn't have the opportunity to advertise on private property, right? We're looking at what's going to increase voter turnout, right? And as my colleague had just stated, the provincial election just had the lowest voter turnout in history, which goes back to saying that signs probably did not help. You know, how can we say signs helped because part of your argument and some of the other arguments that have come out is that we need more visibility to get voter turnout. It is low. So this is not the answer to it.
I would say signs are more for name recognition. And if you look at your own ward, I think there was 12 between all the various
11.
races. There was about 11 or 12, so 11 people running. To say that democracy was messy up in Ward 7's an understatement, right? Just by the very nature of having 11 candidates up there. But in particularly in Ward 7, it's very difficult to get name recognition, and it's probably the biggest way that a lot of the new people that were running were able to do that. You guys won because you worked hard and door knocked, but not everybody has the capabilities, and that's one way to get out name recognition.
And you've given the perfect example. With Councillor Chi and myself, we were able to be where we are today because we door knocked. And quite honestly, I had less signage on the arterial roads than I did as I concentrated on private property is one of the reasons I can say that I was able to beat a strong incumbent, but it was door knocking. And I was probably one of the last ones to put it out on arterial roads too. And in particular, 6th line was such a huge mess that you couldn't even really see one in front of the other. And then again, enforcement wasn't done on areas where it was restricted as well. So,
Councillor Nanda?
yes.
Could I
Yes.
beg you to slip a question in there so
Yes,
that?
well, she had pointed to our
Right.
ward in particular, so I wanted to let her know where it came from. But that's
You could
fine.
say,
I think I
would
would
you
go
agree
back
with that or something?
Yes.
to say that a good marketing campaign has every aspect covered, and road signs are an important part to let the public know about who's running, that there's an election on, and to prompt them to go look for more information.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Colburn. I have a question for you.
Yes, sir.
Would you please stay for questions from Councillor Giddings? Councillor
I-
Giddings.
Mr. Giddings.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As a candidate, you had a rough idea of your budget, and you sat down with your team and your advisors, and you decided where to spend it. And some of it was on signs, some was brochures, some was whatever. So as a candidate, if you don't believe in signs, you wouldn't have had to do them, correct?
I'm very pragmatic, and some people would call me frugal. So yes, however, I would say I was only nominated 6 days before the election. To say that I had no time to sit down and carefully plan everything is unfortunately not true. Hopefully that won't be the case the next time. But yes, we wouldn't spend. It was probably the major expenditure probably that we had in our campaign was around signs. So it's.
But the choice is the candidates, where they put their money.
Yes.
If they don't like signs, don't do them.
There you go.
Thank you very much.
Yes, you're welcome.
Ms. Colburn, thank you very much. It's always a pleasure to see you.
Thank you.
We appreciate your information.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk, next delegation.
The next delegation is David Mallon from Chartwell Maple Grove Residents Association.
Mr. Mallon is possibly by Zoom. Do I understand correctly? So we'll pause a moment while somehow or other Zoom connects us. Here he comes. I can see his square here on Oakville Squares. And as soon as he is unmuted, we will look forward to his information. Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm here all week. Welcome, Mr. Mallon. We look forward to your information.
How does that sound now? Can you hear me?
You sound beautiful.
Oh,
A radio voice, if I ever heard one.
you are too kind. We'll make this as brief as we can. Good evening, Mayor Burton, councillors, staff, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Dave Mallon, and I represent Chartwell Maple Grove Residents Association. I would like to speak against the motion proposed by councillors Nanda and O'Meara to limit election signs to private property only. Before making my brief presentation, I would just like to acknowledge and support the research that Elizabeth Chalmers did on behalf of JCRA and the comments from OLRA and TCRA, who generally support our position. I have only 4 points to put forward. I will endeavor to do so briefly and succinctly. May I start by saying our residents strongly support democracy. Maybe that's something that needs to be reaffirmed in this day and age, since there are times when we wonder what happened to it. Number one, we see the provision of candidates' signs on public streets during election time as a testament and encouragement to a living democracy. The abundance and at times the overabundance and confusion demonstrates our community's passion and interest in the democratic process. We are fortunate and blessed in Oakville to number amongst our community many who are willing to take the challenge of candidacy and then, if successful, the heavy workload and responsibilities of public office in the interest of good democratic government of our affairs in our region and town. Number 2, as written by my colleague, Tony Bennett, the democratic process is messy, scrappy, untidy, and at times very uncomfortable for a whole lot of reasons. But it is better by far than the alternatives, which are often tidy, well-organized, neat, and intended to result in a preordained outcome. They are seen in autocracies. We prefer a democracy, warts and all, and petty steps like banning signs on public property are the first steps on a slippery slope, and to us are not acceptable. If signs are restricted to private property, the playing field is no longer level. Access to places to put up signs announcing candidates will be limited to those who have access to suitable private property and denied to those who don't. Access will be unequal, and some may gain an advantage, while others may be disadvantaged by having no place to put their signs. In closing, yes, it's true that the proliferation of signs during an election can be messy, unattractive, and aesthetically displeasing, and vandalism can make it worse. We applaud any steps the town staff and council may make towards improving the situation. But this messy, unattractive, and aesthetically displeasing appearance during the period of an election is a small price for us to pay for our democracy. I'll stop my comments there, respectfully submitted on behalf of Chartwell Maple Grove. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mallon, for your economical presentation of your remarks and the endorsement of the prior ones. I'm not seeing any questions for you, but I will thank you very much again for the time you took and the trouble you took to bring us your information. Madam Clerk, is there another delegation?
Yes, we have one more delegation. Anu Mali, representing North Oakville Ward 7 Residents Association.
Ms. Molly, welcome. Council looks forward to your information. Please make yourself comfortable and try to speak into the microphone, and we'll all hear you then.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Oakville Council and Mayor Burton. As a board member of North Oakville Ward 7, I would like to say that the North Oakville Ward 7 Residents Association supports the motion to ban the election campaign on the public property. We are in support of signs on the private property only. And you can understand I come from Ward 7. I represent Ward 7. Recent elections are the good example why we need to ban these signage. We've been in Ward 7, this association has been in Ward 7 since 2018 and have wanted this sign ban since then. In recent 2022 municipal election, we had asked all candidates, whomsoever the winner would be, to ban the election signage from the 6th line and other public property for the safety and environmental reasons. Now, we've had near accidents on 6th line with signs blowing onto the road on the windy days and which were left there for days afterwards. We've had some complaints of flat tires from the screws or nails of the signage onto the road. And I mean, I just know that most likely the council would be blamed for the lack of action if any accident were to occur on the public road. Now, we had, as all of you know, we had 11 candidates in Ward 7 and had more than 400 large and small signages on the short stretch of 6th line itself at any given time. That completely blocked the sight line and caused significant distractions. This is not only a big safety hazard, but it completely blocked the view close to stop signs. I mean, I have been driving up and down that road. I go to pick up my kids every day, and I can tell you, it was just hard, especially the days when the weather is off. It is just not possible to even see some of the stop signs. On top of that, we have a lot of development going on. It just keeps getting worse. I'm just glad we didn't have any fatal accident during that time. It was just good concoction for that to happen. Enforcement was not done, as Councillor Nanda just pointed out a few minutes ago. Enforcement was not done after multiple requests because the town said it was on an allowable road. And as far as I can tell you, I have personally made several requests. Like I said, I was driving past that road several times a day. All I kept hearing was lack of manpower. We will do it, but as Councillor just mentioned, that there's still some signage across that area. We still see that. It's just never ending. Now, other than safety, we also have an issue of environmental concern here. The environmental impact is, of course, significant, and there is no recycling mandate for the candidates. I still see, as a resident of the area, I still see signages everywhere. They lasted for months, and even now I see them sitting in the piles of snow. I just don't understand if there is any mandate or not. Most of the signs will end up in landfill, for sure. Signs were illegally put on public property. That is the part of Halton region. And thus the town could not enforce those signs. I'm sure the town can provide insight into the weeks of complaints where the issue was over jurisdiction and the town could not act. I myself have filed one of such complaints about such signage, but the signage was still there because, again, manpower. So with the number, and as a voter, I can vouch for one thing, that with the number of signs out, the voter turnout was still the lowest, okay? It has been in many years. That has been in many years. Door knocking and meeting residents wins elections, not signage. And what actually baffled me while I was hearing all these in favor comments and findings, I don't think marketing can get that relevance compared to safety of the people, compared to the environmental concern. We are living in the times where we're talking about paperless offices. Why signage? We have no proofs, we have no study, we have no statistics that tells you that it is bringing it's bringing voters to vote. No, it doesn't. If anything, it's an annoyance. I did door knocking for one of the candidates, and I can vouch for so many such inputs that I received from people. None of them had idea of why those signages were there. They just knew elections were coming. The real information to a voter goes when you door knock, when you make that connect. Federal, provincial, whatever level of election. You talk about yourself, you reach out to the voters, that's what is going to get them rolling. None of the signage would do. If anything, it's going to cause more and more annoyance. We had piles of signage. I don't think it helped. It didn't bring the voters out. As a voter, if I really want to vote, if I really have true intention to go out there and vote, I would do my homework. I will really know about candidates. I will perhaps ask my neighbor even, but I don't think I will actually look for signage. If anything, I would want them out, not just as a representative of the association, but also as an individual, as a responsible citizen, as a member of the community. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation and your information. And you obviously put a lot of thought into it. And you do bring relevant experience to your testimony, which I think is interesting. I'm looking if council members have questions. Councillor Hazard-Thiel has a question for you.
Please. Thank you very much for coming out. You heard tonight some people offer some solutions, and you've referenced that enforcement was a concern of yours. So knowing that public consultation is going to occur and that there's a fair number of people who are talking about ways to either control the number of signs, the length of weeks that an election is signage is out, possibly investing in greater enforcement. Do you see those as ways and opportunities to address some of your concerns?
Right. So, sorry, I don't think there was a question.
So the question is, when you hear that there's maybe opportunities to look at enforcement, to change the numbers of signs, to change the number of days and weeks that signs are up, and there was much more than that came out in some of the solutions. Do you see some of those as mitigating some of your frustrations?
No, I don't think so. It will again relate to how many number of candidates. What is their mindset? How do they think is the right approach? They will try each and every means to reach out to people at whatever cost. But are we ready to pay that cost as a society? I don't think so.
Well, you and I will have to agree to disagree on that. Thanks very much for your time.
I have to go with that, yes.
Thank you very much for your information and your forthright answers. Thank you. Madam Clerk, is there another delegation?
No, that concludes our delegations.
All right. Council, the matter's been dealt with earlier by the referral motion, but I think it would be in order for someone to move receipt of the information from the public and council. Councillor Dudek, thank you. Any objection?
Sorry, Your Worship, can I speak against the motion to refer, please?
No, that's passed.
I'm absolutely gobsmacked that the mover of the motion and the seconder don't get to speak to this motion. I cannot believe that that has happened.
Councillor, I stress again, you get to speak to your motion when it comes before council. It's been referred. It will come back. So, Councillor Dudek, so I didn't see an objection to Councillor Dudek's motion, and I'm going to declare the motion carried. Thank you, Councillor Dudek. Thank you, Council. Council, please turn to item 9.3, the Oakville Transit Provision of Energy Infrastructure and Energy Services Agreement. We need a motion that the town enter into an energy infrastructure contract over a 20-year period with the successful proponent for the provision of energy infrastructure to Oakville Transit for the electrification of the transit fleet, and that the town enter into an energy services agreement for 20 years with the successful proponent for the electrification of the transit fleet, and that the town enter into a design-build agreement with the proponent to expand the existing transit facility and accommodate the energy infrastructure for electrifying the transit fleet, that the EIC, ESA, and design-build agreements be executed in accordance with bylaw 2013-57, and that staff be directed to continue exploring funding opportunities and evaluate the potential buyout options outlined in the agreements. Is there someone for that motion? Councillor Longo, thank you. Is there any, shall I put the vote? Is there any objection to the motion? Madam Clerk, there being none, that carries. Council, that brings us to item 10.1, citizen appointments to the Accessibility Advisory Committee, Committee of Adjustment, the Heritage Oakville Advisory Committee, and the Oakville Public Library Board of Directors. I would like to suggest, because there's some, it's apparent to the chair that there's some need to go into detail on each of these. I would propose that we strike a committee composed of one member of each council, excuse me, of each ward. Sometimes it feels like each ward is its own council. I'd like to propose that we strike a committee, a special committee, to consider the applications for the committee appointments and to bring back recommendations to council for appointments. And I would like to ask that special committee to report back at the next council meeting or the next after. I give a little bit of flexibility. I'm looking around and seeing nods, so I'm taking it that we're on the same wavelength. So that would be the suggestion. If I could have a mover of that, Councillor Chisholm, thank you. My intention is that then we would then by resolution appoint the members. So the first vote I'll call is there any objection to Councillor Chisholm's motion? Madam Clerk, there's none, so that carries. And now, Is there a volunteer from Ward 1 to serve on this committee? Councillor McNeese, I believe you've been acclaimed. From Ward 2, Councillor Chisholm, congratulations. Ward 3, Councillor Giddings, congratulations. Ward 4, Councillor Longo, congratulations. There's a pattern here. I notice it's the town-only councillors. Okay. Ward 5, Councillor Knoll is volunteering. All right. Congratulations. Ward 6, is there a nominee? Councillor Adams. Oh, we get a different pattern over here. Congratulations, Councillor Adams. Ward 7, Councillor Nanda. It's a pure contrast. Congratulations, Councillor Nanda. And under the procedure bylaw, of course, the mayor is a member of all committees. So thank you. Now, could I have a mover appointing those members? Councillor Elgar, thank you. Any objection? Councillor Elgar, congratulations, your motion carries.
It's a big night.
Big night. I think we're getting everybody into the minutes. I always try anyway. All right. So now we need someone to move that the minutes of the Accessibility Advisory Committee meeting of December 8th be received. Councillor Giddings, thank you for that. Any objection? There being none, that carries. Would someone be good enough to move that we rise and report to council? Councillor Lischina, thank you. I rise and, is there any objection? There being none, that carries. I rise and report the Committee of the Whole has met and made recommendations on consent items 7.1, 0.2, 0.3, 0.4, and 0.5, discussion items 9.1, 0.2, and 0.3, and discussion item 10.1 is noted by the clerk. A mover and seconder for this report would be in order. Councillor McNeese, and who else hasn't been on the agenda yet? Councillor Knoll. Any objection? Congratulations, your motion carries. You have your information items circulated electronically, your status of outstanding issues, and we have a little bit of new business. To start new business, thank you, Councillor Hazard-Thiel. I'll get to you in just a second. This is new business? No, what is it?
Status of outstanding issues.
Oh, I beg your pardon. Away you go.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Burton. I have just a question on the request for report for use of signage for sponsors of local BIAs. And I see that the status is, has the quote, resource constraints. And I'm just wondering if there's an opportunity for legal to provide perhaps some assistance to municipal enforcement, recognizing folks that step up in our community and sponsor some of the programming that we see in BIAs, and finding a way to make it balanced and respectful is really what's at the heart of this. People, businesses come forward to sponsor, and currently there's some question about how we recognize them on a sign, and BIAs use every dollar that they have to benefit the commercial district and to create great opportunities for community events for our citizens. And I'm wondering, is there any wiggle room to move it up?
Through you, Mayor Burton, we'd be happy to assist our colleagues in municipal enforcement to attempt to address that issue for you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. So, new business? I'd like to start, pardon? All right. Councillor Chisholm, if you have new business, would you mind letting me start with new business? Thank you. And Councillor Hazard-Thiel, are you also in line?
My apologies, Mayor Burton.
It's okay. We're all here together on Team Oakville. Look, on behalf of council and the town of Oakville, I just want to publicly extend our condolences to the family, friends, and former colleagues and our neighbors in Mississauga following the passing of my dear friend, former Mayor Hazel McCallion. As I have said, Mayor McCallion will be remembered as possibly the most influential mayor in Canadian history. And in memory of Mayor McCallion, flags at all town of Oakville facilities will be flown at half-mast from now until sunset, the day of the funeral. She was, as the Toronto Star called her in their banner headline earlier today, a force of nature and never to be disregarded. Whether you agreed with her or not, she made you take account. And I now turn to Councillor Chisholm.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have a notice of motion here with respect to the 2024 Centennial Cup bid to be considered by Council. May I read the notice of motion, Your Worship?
Well, yes.
Whereas the Oakville Blades have submitted a bid to host the 2024 Centennial Cup at the 16-mile sports complex to Hockey Canada. Whereas Oakville is a hockey town and the 16-mile sports complex is the ideal host location for the 2024 Centennial Cup. Whereas the state-of-the-art facility offers all the amenities needed to comfortably host all 10 participating teams and tens of thousands of spectators throughout the tournament. Whereas when the concept for 16-mile sports complex was originally conceived, it was for hosting events such as the 2024 Centennial Cup as part of the town's vision to become a leading destination for national and international tournaments and events. Whereas the Centennial Cup tournament will attract a minimum of 42,500 spectators, a minimum of 3,082 hotel rooms, nights, and Hockey Canada predicts upwards to a positive of $5 million economic impact for the 2024 event. Whereas the Council for the host of Estevan, Saskatchewan committed $150,000 over 2 years to be the top sponsors for the 2022 Centennial Cup National Junior A Hockey Championships after they were awarded the tournament. And whereas hosting the 2024 Centennial Cup will give the town national exposure and will deliver economic spin-offs and benefits for local restaurants, businesses, and hospitality industry. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the town of Oakville, Town Council support the Oakville Blades bid to host the 2024 Centennial Cup, and that staff report back with the appropriate sponsorship opportunities and options for Council to consider before the Centennial Cup tournament is awarded, and that the town, Visit Oakville, and Council will support Oakville Blades organization to ensure that the 2024 Centennial Cup is the biggest and most successful tournament in its history. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chisholm. It's especially important and weighty coming from the biggest star from the Blades that we have on council. Oh, wait, the only one. Councillor Duddick.
Thank you, through you, Your Worship. Because we've come out of the committee of the whole, if you need a seconder, I'd be pleased to second that.
Thank you, Councillor Duddick. You are the seconder. All right, and so it's not in order to vote on that tonight. We'll vote on it at the next council meeting. The next notice of motion is from Councillor O'Meara and Councillor Duddick. Councillor O'Meara.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll read the motion out here. In opposition to Bill 3, Strong Mayors Building Homes Act 2022, and Bill 39, Better Municipal Government Act 2022, whereas the Government of Ontario has enacted Bill 3, Strong Mayors Building Homes Act 2022, and Bill 39, Better Municipal Government Act, and whereas these bills amend various statutes with respect to special powers and duties of the heads of council, and whereas these powers have been applied to the City of Toronto and the City of Ottawa and are intended to include additional municipalities in future, and whereas Bill 3 and 39 give mayors additional authority and powers, including the capacity to veto some decisions of council, the ability to pass and repeal bylaws with only 1/3 support of council, the power to propose and adopt municipal budgets, the faculty to hire, dismiss, and direct senior staff to develop policy proposals, and the authority to create and reorganize municipal departments, and the power to create committees and to choose chairs of same. And whereas advancing the power of mayors while depleting authority and powers from councils undermines the ability of ward councils to effectively represent their constituencies, and whereas increased asymmetry of power at the council table diminishes local representation and local democracy, and whereas no public consultation or debate with elected council or citizens was undertaken in devising or enacting these fundamental changes to our governance, And whereas the province asserts these powers will allow more homes to be built, and whereas no evidence has been provided to support this claim, therefore be it resolved that Oakville Town Council opposes Bill 3, the Strong Mayor's Building Homes Act 2022 and Bill 39, Better Municipal Governments Act 2022, and asks that the Government of Ontario consider this legislation and that changes to the Municipal Act 2001 are unnecessary and will negatively affect the town of Oakville. And that if the stated goal of this legislation is to construct more housing in Ontario, this can be accomplished through other means, including amendment of the Planning Act and funding of more affordable housing. And that a letter be written by the mayor communicating his and council's opposition to be sent to the Premier of Ontario and the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, and that this resolution be distributed to the leaders of all parties represented in the legislature, all Ontario members of provincial parliament, and Ontario municipalities and the Association of Municipalities of Ontario. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor O'Meara. Council, would you like?
I would like to move that we waive procedural bylaw. I was wondering if I would like to move waiving procedural bylaws and dealing with this issue tonight.
Councillor Elgar has moved, and someone will second, I'm sure, Councillor Giddings, thank you, that we waive the procedure bylaw in order to consider this matter now upon presentation. Is there any objection? Madam Clerk, I see no objection, and so the waiving motion has the requisite supermajority and it carries. I wonder if it would be in order or if council would like me to say a few words about this, being the mayor in the mix. For 4 terms only, I've had the honor to serve with more than 20 different councillors with different backgrounds and different life experiences. For those 16 years or so, the diversity of opinion and experiences of our councillors have made for what I would call strong councils in a system in Ontario that is properly called the weak mayor, weak council system. So there is no I in team, and there's no possible way we could enjoy the successes and accomplishments in Oakville and Halton that we have achieved without approaching our work as Team Oakville. Our strong councils have done a lot. You know, for an officially weak council, weak mayor system, just think, we stopped an inappropriate gas plant. We conserved the Glen Abbey Cultural Heritage Landscape. We prioritized growing our tree canopy and have made great progress towards our 40% goal by 2057, the 200th anniversary of our town. We have ensured that we have the healthiest finances and fiscal reserves in Canada, according to the Institute of Municipal Finance and Government at the Monk School at the University of Toronto. That's not my boast, that's theirs. We've been recognized as Canada's best place to live once or twice, and we've, for 4 years in a row, we've been recognized as one of Canada's best locations to invest. Now, Team Oakville faces new challenges, and just to name a few, working with 3 other layers of government, I'm sorry, I'm supposed to say levels, aren't I? 3 other layers of government to address the housing supply crisis, to ensure that we meet our provincially legislated housing targets, to accommodate historic levels of immigration that the federal government has announced in the face of a housing crisis, and continuing to address the climate change emergency that we declared, and to meet and beat our net zero targets. We're going to electrify our transit fleet. We're going to ensure our tax increases remain below inflation, I do believe. I hope that's baked into our culture now at Team Oakville. And we're going to continue to provide the services and the community infrastructure that residents tell us they want and that we know we need in order to keep up with growth. I will continue to serve as a mayor who wants to be known for collaboration and teamwork. There is simply no other way to accomplish anything for our residents. I am guided by an old proverb. If you want to go fast, go alone, but if you want to go far, go together. I have striven that we go together. I've always remembered, no matter what the disagreement of the day might be, there will always be a new issue and a new day, and we may want to maintain good relations so that we can reason together to solve whatever obstacle reaches us. So, together, we can deliver for Oakville as a team, as Team Oakville. So I'll support this. All right. Would you like me to put the vote now? Would it suit you if we ask the clerk to record all our names as in support? Is there any objection to the motion? There being none, Madam Clerk, it's so ordered. If I can make so bold as to call that in order, that's my request. And thank you, Councilors O'Meara and Councilor Duddick, for the opportunity to make a few spontaneous remarks. I know I have another page on the agenda here. Madam Clerk, maybe you can help me out. Thank you. I'm not aware of any requests for reports. Could I be wrong? Okay, I'm not. Councilor Chisholm.
Your Worship, can we just back up on the notice of motion? Condolence
yes.
section?
Yes, here at Team Oakville, we can skate backwards and forwards.
Tongue twist. Anyways, I want to recognize and congratulate Mr. Doug Sams of the Kerr Street Village BIA. He has been elected as president of the Ontario BIAs, which is a high honor for Oakville and for Doug. And so on behalf of council, I'd like to congratulate Doug on his new appointment.
I think we all want to join you in that. And anybody who knows him knows that he always punches above his weight.
Literally.
And he is no lightweight. You know, in the same spirit, I think I'd like to remember to congratulate Gary McNeil on having passed the 10-year mark leading the Kerr Street mission. That makes him the longest running leader of that organization that I can remember, I think ever. And I was with him and some other Oakville citizens earlier today celebrating the opening of the food hub that the region of Halton has made possible on Mainway, just over the line from us here. And I had to notice that an Oakville company, Melrose, built it. And Mr. McNeil had the assistance for most of those last 10 years of yeoman work from 2 Oakville residents who are retired captains of industry. They were CEOs of major corporations, John McKay and Bill Ardell. Who assisted in getting this plan together that the region has finally embraced. And Chair Carr was there, and Mayor Mary Ann Mead Ward was there, along with other folks from the food security, I don't want to call them industry. And Chair Carr said an interesting thing. He said when he got elected to the legislature, the government of the day that he was, that was, you know, the Bob Rae government, announced that year in 1990 that they were going to eradicate food banks. And he said, here we are 33 years later, and we still need them. And and he was very happy, and so am I, and I know you will be too, that we're upping our game on food security with this food hub, which is going to, its function will be to make sure that our various food banks across Halton have better food to distribute. So all in all, it was a great day for the people of Halton and the people of Oakville, and a moment of pride. And thank you, Councilor Chisholm, for the congratulations to Mr. Sams. And I hope you appreciate the congratulations that I'm giving to not only Gary McNeil, but all the fine folk in Oakville who made this food hub possible. Anyone else? All right. Then I think what we want is mover and seconder for consideration and reading of the bylaws. Councilor Chisholm and Councilor Shi. Now I think I have most of you on the minutes. Is there any objection to the bylaws as listed? Madam Clerk, there being none, that carries and the bylaws are considered read and passed. And thank you, Council, for a great evening's work. We did a lot of great things here today, and it was a pleasure working with you. And I look forward to our next work session, and that ends the meeting.